positive thinking is not going to work because your body's not going to believe that bullshit unless it's true. It's about turning towards your story. It might not be a comfortable story, but when you turn toward it, you find its roots, you work with it, you can develop a fit mind, which is an adaptable and flexible mind. It's wild the ways that we find to avoid feeling our feelings. My judgments about myself are an effort to not feel my feelings. So when I have a critical story about myself, the story is just creating separation between my body and me going to my head.
Hey guys, welcome to another transformative episode of Liberate Your Bliss. I'm Chelsea, and today we're diving deep into the powerful world of breathwork and its incredible potential to heal and transform our lives. We're also diving deep into shadow work, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to my special guest, Pat. He's a true pioneer in the realm of breathwork and personal transformation. Pat is the author of the groundbreaking book Fit Mind, as well as Shadow Work, and the creator of an intensive 12-month breathwork training program that's changing lives all around the globe. And in our soul-stirring conversation today, we'll explore how Pat's journey led him to discover the life-changing power of breathwork. We'll delve into the science behind this and how it can be a catalyst for profound physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. Whether you're new to breathwork, new to shadow work, or a seasoned practitioner, this episode promises to expand your understanding of this powerful tool for transformation. We'll discuss how shadow work can help you to move through traumas by using breathwork to reduce stress, increase energy, and connect you more deeply with your authentic self. So open your hearts and minds as we explore the transformative power of Breath with Pat. Get ready to learn practical techniques you can start right now to begin shifting your energy, clearing your mind, and tapping into your innate healing abilities. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me. I know you're a very busy man and very popular in the podcast realm. Everybody's trying to get you on, so I appreciate having you here.
No, thank you.
Tell me all about this book and what inspired you to write Fit Mind, and what is a fit mind?
So I came up in the fitness space. That's where I kind of began my journey. Insecure, young teenager with no confidence. This has gone back a while. And I think when I found fitness and I found martial arts as a teenager, it was kind of the first thing that gave me confidence. And so my whole life became about fitness. And I actually went to America when I was 18 to cage fight, which was 20 years ago now nearly. And it was just a very different thing at that time for an Irish teenager to go and try to pursue this thing that was just completely unrealistic. Whilst I was there, I had this mentor who was in the fitness industry called Eric, and he was kind of my hero. And every day we'd sit on the beach and I'd tell him about my dreams and I'd ask him about his, and he'd always encourage me with my dreams, but I just sensed there was something with him where he didn't see that in himself. And he was 10 years older and ended up taking his own life, which for me at 18 was just like hard to fathom. And I think I had a dream of being a cage fighter up to that point, and then when Eric left, I kind of took on his dream, I think, to some degree, and decided I'd pursue fitness. And so that became my passion and my career, and I gave up the MMA stuff and I moved into fitness and failed with 2 businesses. But ultimately at 24, kind of at my lowest point mentally, where I was at the same point where Eric had been, something shifted, and I think my whole ego just was destroyed by failure of a few businesses. I started one more time with a fitness class that started with 5 clients on the local beach, and in 4 years went to 20,000 clients all over the world. So my whole life changed in the space of 4 years. I wrote books, I went on TV and radio back in Ireland, I bought a house, bought a car. Everything changed externally, but internally there was still the same wounding that was driving me. From a personal standpoint, I recognized I had been running from myself and I wasn't comfortable in my own mind. And then working with 20,000 people, there was also the realization that it's not about training, it's not about nutrition, it's about what's going on between their ears. And that led me into coaching and NLP and hypnosis and then breathwork and trauma release and plant medicine and every type of thing. And so that's a long way of saying Fit Mind was a book that I wrote a couple of years ago that was about how do we recognize the stories we're telling ourselves, find the roots of those stories, and then move past the stories that are just keeping us stuck. So a little bit of a cognitive approach, but also an embodied kind of understanding that your triggers and your wounds and the body's telling you what your story is. And positive thinking is not going to work because your body's not going to believe that bullshit unless it's true. So it's about turning towards your story. It might not be a comfortable story, but when you turn toward it, you find its roots, you work with it, you can develop a fit mind, which is an adaptable and flexible mind.
Beautiful. It's funny. I think a lot of people that come in to, for me, new moon workshops, and they're like, oh, but I'm doing my daily affirmations and I'm doing my gratitude journaling. And it's like, well, I always say to them, your manifestation is a beautiful big tree. and those branches of the things that you want, they're big vibrational things. What are you rooted in? What are you believing about yourself? Because if you are believing you're unworthy of love or that success is not possible, that tree, it can't hold those branches. So we got to turn around, look in the mirror, and do the shadow work. And I think a lot of people avoid that and run. So I love what you said about running. What were you running from?
Myself. I mean, I found so many different ways to run from myself. When I woke up at 28, having achieved everything I thought I ever wanted, the story in my head was I should be grateful and I should be happy. There was all these shoulds. And that's, I think, a challenge with the positive thinking realm is there's a bit of shame attached to actually feeling what's genuinely human. So it's like, I should be, insinuates that I'm wrong or I'm bad. Or it's like a parent saying to a child, you should be grateful, you've got this, and invalidating the emotion. So I think we recreate the same experience that we had in childhood. How our parents related to our emotions typically is how we relate to ourselves. So I'll often say when I told my father as a kid that I was anxious, he'd say to me, when I was your age, I didn't have time to be anxious. And now as a man, when my anxiety comes on board, there's a voice in my head that says, I don't have time for this. So I was running from my emotions. I was running from my truth. I was running from my insecurities. I was running from my wounding. I would say I ran out of places to look. It's a little bit cliche, but I looked to success. Success was a blessing and a failure, or a blessing and a curse in a sense. More of a blessing, I guess, but not in the way that I thought. I thought I'll get somewhere and everything will fall into place. But I got somewhere and I realized, this isn't it. I've got nowhere else to look. I've got to kind of turn inward. And that was the bit of a redirection.
What was the big turning point that made you finally pick up that mirror and stop running from yourself?
There's a story about two dogs sat side by side outside a coffee shop. And one of the dogs is sitting on a nail. And a passerby looks and says, it's strange. Somehow the dog can talk for this story, but it is, why is your friend sitting on the nail? And he said, it hasn't gotten painful enough for it to move. And so I think to some degree we experience a bit of, discomfort. So I think for a long time, again, there was these shoulds. I shouldn't be anxious because I've got money in the bank. I've got a house. I've got a great girlfriend. I've got hundreds of clients that love me. I've got, everything I ever wanted. I've built a business in Ireland in an industry that wasn't an industry until I came into it at that stage. Fitness just wasn't a logistical reality. And so there was all these shoulds, and I think I went to a psychotherapist when I was 28, and I'd gone to shamanic, I'd gone to everything. I was just like, not macho, but I was like a young man, and I just found myself in all these weird, I'm in a copper pyramid with someone chanting over it, and it was so strange for me at the time, but I was so hurting, I would go to anyone, and I was super open to everyone. And I went to a psychotherapist. It changed my life, I think. She said, there's a fire alarm in your house. And the purpose of that fire alarm is when there's danger, the alarm goes and you get to safety. But she said sometimes the fire alarm messes up and you're using your toaster or the oven and it's going off. There's no danger, but the alarm's going. She said you've got a fire alarm in your system that cues for when you're in danger, but yours is broken. Yours is your amygdala, your stress response is going every time someone looks at you funny, every time you read something negative about yourself online. So I was just in a constant state of hypervigilance. And I had been I suppose the thing that got me success was also then the limiting factor. And I think that happens. Like what works until it doesn't work. So being driven and being relentless and like working the way I worked in my 20s worked until I burnt out at 28. So I think it was a case of burnout as well. And that was the turning point. There's a TV show in Ireland called The Late Late Show. And at my lowest point when I was suicidal at 24, I had a huge amount of shame with like moving back in with my parents. And I'm from a small village. I would bump into my neighbours and they'd say, you're back. I thought you were in Dublin. And they'd ask me what I was doing with my life and they'd boast about what their kids were doing. My kid's gone to England and my kids, and I just felt like such a failure to my parents. And I told myself someday I'm going to get the Late Late Show. Like I'll be a success story because that was like the full circle moment. Yeah, I was just driven by all this wounding. Like I'm going to show the world. The world wasn't even watching. It was just my story about, what I thought was going on. So when I did the Late Late Show, I was like tip of the mountain. I was like, fuck, wow. Wrong mountain.
Well, yeah, and then tip of the mountain. Then what's the next mountain to climb, right? That's kind of the thing that is so hard to explain to people that are running, that are, like you said, when you're running, right, you're in that hypervigilance, adrenaline's pumping, the amygdala's firing over everything feels like trauma. Yeah. You can't differentiate between what's real and what's not real because the body is actually showing you real signs and symptoms that you're not okay.
Yeah.
And we invalidate that, and we put people on anti-anxiety medication, and we put people on antidepressant medication, when all it is the body showing you signs that something's not right, something's not working.
Yeah.
And we run from it, and we just run and run and run. And I was the same way as you. I think I thought it was going to be in the next passport stamp and the next drug I took and the next party I went to and the next man I slept with. It was constant until I finally figured out I'm running in place and I'm just trying to catch my own tail here.
Yeah. It's wild the ways that we find to avoid feeling our feelings.
Crazy.
I've been looking a lot at this recently. My judgments about myself are an effort to not feel my feelings. So when I have a critical story about myself, the story is just creating separation between my body and me going to my head. When I have judgments about you and I point the finger at you, it's a feeling I don't want to feel, anger or fear. We used to sit in men's groups and, I would have the men sit opposite a partner, look at the man in the eyes and tell the man what you judged about him. So I don't trust you, I might say. And then I would ask the man to identify, what's the feeling below that judgment of not trusting this man? And they would say, I'm scared of you. It's a very different energy. I don't want to feel the fear, and so I point the finger and I say, I don't trust you. So I think judgments toward ourselves, toward others, keep us away from the feeling. Addictions keep us away from the feeling. So there's so many ways, right? So it's, and then I think the anxiety for me, a client came to me yesterday and said, I've got a son who's got anxiety. What's the breathwork technique for him? And I said, well, look, in the short term, get them to breathe slowly through their nose. But that's not the solution. The solution is the anxiety is there because there's a backlog of emotions that haven't been felt. And if that's all sitting there, you're just going to be in a chronic state of anxiety. So yes, you can tiptoe through life hoping that you can regulate yourself every time you get stressed, or you can deal with what's there. And I think the healing path is twofold. The first half is building enough resilience and capacity to be able to then go into the second half, which is finding your edges. I don't think we can go to the edges until we have a sense of safety within ourselves.
No, I think that's a really important thing too for people watching is, people come to Bali. You've been here 5 months, so I've been here 2 years. I can tell you that people come here and they come here for 3 weeks and they'll book an energy session with me 5 days, and I'm like, it's too much, right? Because there's that part of the healing journey where you've recognized you've been running from your emotions for too long, but then you just go, and it's then you just go punish yourself, and then go back to the life that traumatized you, and you wonder, and it's it's a big issue that I'm seeing in Bali with the cathartic big healing that's happening, because in reality, yes, those emotions that we need to face, that has to happen. But the rewiring of the brain happens in theta, which happens in safety, like you said. So we have to find safety to go in and titrate in and out of those situations. But if you don't end a session in theta, to me, I feel like we may be missing the mark here. And there's a lot of people that are blasting conscious connected breath and blasting through these big Kundalini energy healings. But the person that's coming to my class, their energy is not changing month after month after month because they're not doing the integration work in between the sessions. So how do you balance that with your clients?
Partially, I think about expression and containment as being two different kind of skill sets. So a lot of men's work or breath work, the performative stuff that you see online, it's for the Instagram video or it's for the facilitator's validation. The facilitator doesn't have enough grounding in themselves to be able to hold a session where nothing happens. So they're forcing something to happen. So effectively they're taking from the client. So there's an idea that, for me to feel good in my own skin, my client needs to have a big emotional release. So they're chasing something, which for me is an issue. As a result, I think you see all these big, screaming and shout, which happens. It's a natural thing sometimes that's going to happen. But if you're chasing that, it's an issue for me. I think containment is important. And the simple way I think about it, imagine an anger release and someone's shouting and screaming and it looks messy and all that. And that's fine. But I think sometimes it bypasses the heart. And I think you actually have to feel it in the heart before it can be,
You nailed it.
And that's the containment. It's okay, I feel my power now. Otherwise, you're just spitting this energy out and it's not really going anywhere. So even the word release, I do trauma release work and all this kind of stuff, but even release, I'm not sure, is that the right word? Is it expression? Is it I'm learning to work with this energy in a different way? Release is kind of I'm going to get rid of this thing.
But then that's shame again, right? It's more it's really more like trauma integration. You nailed it. It's the heart space. We heal in the heart space. That's the only place we heal. And I think grief and sadness and heartbreak and loss and fear of those things causes us to start running. And then we start running because we're afraid. We're afraid of feeling sad. It's really sadness under all of that. I've got goosebumps. And so you start running, and then we start projecting that fear as anger. Because I got to tell you, I lost my dog last week. It was way easier for me for the 6 days. And I got to tell you, because I do my work, I sat in my emotions. I blamed every single person, myself included, and had to go through heaps of judgment and anger releases. But I was avoiding just that broken heart that she's gone. I didn't want to feel that. It's way easier to be angry. So that's why I think these big, come and scream your head off at this session, but there's no heart healing. We're missing the mark.
And I almost think there's maybe it's like a natural progression or a natural kind of like my start in breathwork was 10 years ago with Wim Hof in the mountains in Poland. And I mean, I look back and I'm like, oh, it's probably not the most optimal thing in the world, but it got me started, right? Even now, if I were to work with, like, say, a corporate group of men that are quite averse to this stuff and like not into it or whatever, something like Wim Hof for me is like really perfect because they're going to feel their bodies. It might be as simple as, oh, I felt tingles, you know, but that might be what gets them to the second session. I do sometimes feel like the goal of the first session is to get someone to the second session, to give them an experience that feels safe enough, but is, but I think for me, the hope over time in my own personal practice and in working with clients is that we can work on more subtle layers. So yeah, you can have the big, like, oh, big experience in Bali where everyone in the room screamed and, you know, I had a little cry and I felt all this space in my body after, which might not be the best, most contained thing in the world. But again, if it gives you an experience and a felt sense of something, my hope would be over like 6 months, someone could get to the point of doing a really gentle, conscious connected breathwork session through the nose and really feel what's under all of that. I was in this retreat last year called Path of Love. It's kind of an Osho inspired retreat. So Osho, they'll do a lot of cathartic work. But there was this meditation we were doing, which was really active meditation, and they call it a burn meditation. So you're like smashing pillows, you're shouting, you're screaming, Nirvana's playing in the background, epic. And I noticed that, you know, that catharsis was, you know, for me, it was easy to like get angry, get fearful, you know, and then I would slow my body right down and then all the grief would come because it just felt so vulnerable to really be with, again, the more subtle layers. So I think that's a piece for people that are driven and have that kind of, I don't know what the word is, but I work with like sometimes extreme athletes and stuff, and I'll tell them, right, everything you've done in your life is extreme, so you're good at that. So what's it going to be like now to soften? This is going to be able to feel super vulnerable for you, but this is like the next part. This is where you're going to find the second half of yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing to look at it like that. And I like how you said 6 months. So do you typically like to work with clients over a longer period of time to help them with more of the integrative stuff?
All I'm doing now at the moment is the facilitator. So I offer a facilitator training for breathworkers, and it's 12 months.
Good. It should be. 3 days for breathwork training is fucking bullshit.
It's crazy, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Mine's 12. Mine's a 12-month. And people are like, well, I already did this and this. And I don't care.
I've got like 8 students on the current training that went through a 400-hour training last year and came out and said, you know, we didn't feel ready to hold space. So now they're in it.
Yeah.
We'll do like 24 case studies minimum to make sure people have 24 sessions under their belts before they certify. But it's all the inner work. I mean, I tell my guys it takes time, but it's like leading from presence. That's the key. Almost like a mother and baby. So baby cries, become dysregulated, and temporarily the baby leans on the mother's nervous system to find safety. That's how I see my role as a facilitator is you're going to go to your edges. You're going to feel dysregulated potentially. And I'm the steady heartbeat in the room that you can lean on temporarily to find that safety when you don't have it fully in yourself. And then we'll integrate, and then your capacity expands over time. So that's, for me, that's the job.
Sounds to me like you're empowering people to help heal themselves.
Yeah.
Instead of being a healer, which I hate that word.
Crazy.
You know, because it is. It's all about holding space for yourself first. If you can't hold space for your own journey, what the fuck are you doing holding space for anybody?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what a big piece when people come in, they have one big experience and they're like, that was amazing. Can I train to be a facilitator?
Yes,
you know?
Spirit told me I need to serve the medicine.
And it's like, well, what kind of shadow work are you ready to do? Because I don't know about you, but holding space now for me, every time I hold space, I'm doing my work through that session.
Yeah.
It's a mirror for me too through my clients. It's all old wounds of mine that I have to sit with the next day and move through and see what I'm triggered by in my students, which is like next level triggers, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I triggered by my students? But it's just, again, it's always a mirror of your inner world and your outer world. And I wish people could see that a little bit more, that it's not, life isn't happening against you. Like nobody's punishing you. You're creating this life with your thoughts, and where are those thoughts coming from? It's your energy, and you change your energy, you change your life. So I want to talk a little bit about starting in Dublin, and you started with cage fighting, you said. So what got you into fighting in the beginning? Why was that the big push? Because I got to tell you, I went to Conor McGregor's where is that? Where is it?
The pub, is it, or the gym?
No, his gym.
Okay.
I went to his boxing gym after training at Bali MMA, and I walked in. I was like, "This is so." It was in. Is it Cromwell?
Crumlin, yeah.
Crumlin, yes. And I walked in. I was like, "Wow, this is a very different experience than being at Bali MMA." So I imagine growing up in a gym like that. What was that like?
Well, I grew up in Galway, which is like 2.5 hours from Dublin. Yeah, that's home for me.
Okay.
Dublin is like, I lived in Dublin when I was 24. Yeah, it was insecurity and fear and just a lack of self-belief that led me to boxing and judo and all these things. It was kind of a weird story in retrospect. I was obsessed with professional wrestling when I was a kid, like obsessed into my teens. And in retrospect, I realized what was happening was like I was projecting my disowned power onto these superheroes on the TV. So oftentimes with clients, I'll have them analyze like, who did you admire as a kid and what was projected onto them, and who did you despise as a kid and what was projected onto them, because you play out the same patterns. One exercise I do with people is to explore the story that you were completely obsessed with as a child, that you played on a loop, and explain the story in 2 minutes in easy language. So I'd say, Harry Potter, read this book time and time again. It's about this boy. He doesn't fit in. He's lost. He's like the weirdo. And then he finds his people and suddenly he's magic. And I'm like, that's my story. Like I've lived out that story. I was completely lost and then I found my people. And so oftentimes we live out the narrative of the story that we had on a loop. So there's so much. So anyway, I was obsessed with wrestlers, and I think I felt really weak and I felt vulnerable because I was bullied so much. And I just saw this on the screen. I was like, wow. And I think I was 13 and I emailed a wrestling school in England. Like I was super early to the internet, but I emailed the school and I said, my dad's making me finish high school before I move to England to be a wrestler. What can I do in the meantime to get ready? And the school messaged me back. They said, start lifting weights so you get strong, and learn judo so you learn how to fall. And I went back to school the next day and I saw judo classes starting tomorrow. It was like
no way.
The law of attraction. So I started judo, and like a couple of months later I won a national title. Not because I was that good, but nobody was doing it. But that gave me an identity for the first time. So it's like, Pat's good at something now. And I was the guy that nobody would fight, or other school, so it gave me something to latch on to, where it's like, I matter now. And then going to England, or going to America, I should say, was like, I'm going to give this a go. So yeah, that was kind of it. Just a lack of belief in myself.
Did your dad believe in himself, or what was it like growing up with your parents?
When I did my first San Pedro ceremony, Wachuma, when I was like, 27, it blew my heart wide open, and I had this very visceral experience of being newborn and being held by my dad and looking up into his eyes, and I was like, wow, my dad was 24 when I came along, and we were moving between different houses because they wouldn't have made a lot of money, and then he was just starting from scratch, and I just had an outpouring of gratitude and appreciation for like all he had done. I was 27 at the time. By the time he was 27, I think he had 3 kids and mortgage and like all this stuff that I couldn't fathom. My judgments that I would have had when I was younger toward my dad really softened in that. He's an accountant, so he's like quite straight and kind of, I think there's a lot of fear, I would say, or control, which is just the nature of that type of personality to some degree. Not to put all accountants in one box, but
my dad's an accountant,
okay.
So yeah, I think it's pretty accurate.
yeah. So yeah, I think there was a lot of fear. I think a lot of my father's decisions in life are probably from a place of, and it's an Irish Catholic family too. It's like, save for the rainy day, don't get above your station. There was a lot of narrative there around play small to some degree. Be good at something, but don't be too good where you stand out. So there's a lot of that messaging I would have taken on, I think. Don't be special.
And what about the emotional regulation in Ireland? Is that something that, I know in America, it's like we're now just starting to teach kids that stuff. So was there any of that work being done in Ireland for your parents, or?
No, I mean, people, the stereotype of Irish people is drinking a lot and, being messy and stuff like that. And that was the case probably growing up. There's been a huge shift over the last couple of years, I think, in the younger generation coming through. I guess the fitness space became a big thing globally for a couple of years. It was huge and it was trendy. And then I think after the fitness, the kind of mindfulness and personal development came in. So I think things are shifting. Ireland's a country that's riddled with a lot of shame. I mean, we were colonized by the English, so they took our language, they took our music, they took a lot of who we are, and obviously transgenerational trauma that comes down through the generations. You had men that didn't get to grieve, you have women that didn't get to grieve, and there's a deep spiritual aspect to Ireland and the people there, but there's also a lot of shame over, I think the English.
Carried on. I've noticed with clients, we're going back about 7 generations of trauma when we're clearing in this space, and it's just wild what our subconscious is carrying that we don't even know is there, right? I think most of my Irish clients that I see tell me about like the brushing it under the rug.
Yeah.
Just everything's fine, I'm good, you know? And I think the 3 things I hear from clients when they come in, and this is one of the things I ask them, is like, how are you doing today? Good, busy, exhausted. Those are the 3 things, all right? Like, and it's like when I ask them that, I'm like, what if we just really tell the truth? You know, what are we really feeling? What if we didn't brush it under the rug and just pretend we were okay, and then everyone starts crying, because it's like this whole society that it's been programmed in Europe and America to work, go, do, perform, achieve, build.
Yeah.
And there's no time for feeling and rest. It's completely out of balance.
Years ago, I was in Aubrey Marcus's mastermind. I'm not really a fan anymore, but I met this girl, and she said, oh, if you're ever in New York, come and hang out. And so maybe a year later, I was in New York, and I went and spent a week with her, and I didn't know her. I'd met her for like 10 minutes, and we ended up like living together for 10 days. And she was a yogi, and she's super in touch with her body, and like I was just disconnected, you know. And every day she'd say, how are you? And I'd be like, I'm fine. And she'd go, fine's not a feeling. And I'd go, okay. Next day, like, how do you feel? I feel good. And she's like, good's not a feeling. And I was like, fuck. Next day, how do you feel? I feel grand. She was just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then we went for lunch like just before I left, and I was being sarcastic, but she didn't realize. And I said, tell me, how do you feel in this moment, you know? She just stops in the restaurant. She's like, great question. And I was like, holy fuck, what's going on? Because I was so shut down. And she expressed exactly how she felt, and I walked away from it, and I was like, scratching my head. I was like, I thought she was weird, but I'm weird, because I have no concept of how I feel. Like you said, I can say I'm exhausted or anxious or fine, but that's not a very wide emotional literacy. And what I recognized was, if you don't know what you feel, you can't know what you need. If you can name your feeling, you can name your need. And if you can meet your needs, you can find your center. And that's it. So if I'm lonely, I just need to face up to the fact I'm lonely, and then I recognize my need is for connection, and then I lean into connection, and then I'm back to center. But if I'm fine and the loneliness is not being acknowledged, then I'm just overlooking the wisdom that's there.
How do you think that we get people, and more men, to start to feel? What do you think they need?
I guess spaces where it's normalized, like that's a big piece. One of my clients yesterday gave me a lovely reflection, and she said, it's kind of a weird thing, I don't know if it'll make sense to everyone, but she said, I love that you give us your loving presence and a place where we can fall apart and not have to be fixed. And for me, that's like the perfect setup, because I think the hardest part in the healing journey is it's not a linear thing. I'd say the healing journey, but just the life journey is not a linear thing. I transitioned from fitness into personal development, and for people on the outside looking in, they're like, oh, this was this smooth move from this to this. My reality was 3 years of, I had all the success in the world, and then I stepped away and gave my gym to my friend and stepped into the unknown, and I spent 3 years just not knowing what was going on in my life. Even a year ago, I moved to Thailand. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I had no idea. So I think you have to fall apart. I think we need the spaces. So for us to feel, we need permission. It's permission slips, like permission to feel. The biggest challenge with trying to get people to open up is the default setting when people open up is to try and fix. So I know, particularly for men, like if we're met with emotion, because we're so, I'm generalizing here, but if I'm a man who's not connected with his own emotional experience, as soon as you have an emotional experience, it's uncomfortable for me. And so I go into fixing mode, because that's all I know. I know how to do, I don't know how to be. Doing is a sympathetic state. Being is a parasympathetic state. So I need to stay in my parasympathetic and just be with you. My friend often says that if you're on your knees, I don't need to lift you up. I need to sit with you for a while before you're ready to stand. And I think that's a nice way to think. So yeah, we need spaces where people can just be held. I'm very close with a lot of people that have gone through 12-step recovery groups. And I was like curious around this, like what's going on here? And what I realized was, these are people that have spent years sitting in circle once a week, where they share what's going on for them, they hear what's going on for others, and they don't have to be fixed. And something changes, and there's an honesty in them. So I think we need that. I think we need probably embodiment practice to like help people to actually notice sensation. And one of my teachers is a Native American, and he said, what's happening is the sensation's in the body, and then we give it a name. So we say, I'm scared. And once it has a name, we go to our heads and we try to figure out why we're scared and how we can get away from the fear. So we've very quickly moved away from the body. I said, what if instead of having to give it a name, we just said, there's tightness in my chest, there's flushness in my face, I'm going to breathe. Okay, the tightness is dissipating a little bit. Now I can feel energy in my hands. And we just worked with it in that way. So yeah, it's places where we're allowed to feel, it's permission to be messy, and it's practices to come back into the body, I think.
When we try to tell the story about what's happening, we kind of fuck ourselves even more.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's just when I ask people, you know, they say, I was so triggered last night, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what did you feel in the body? Oh, I don't know, I was just mad. I'm like, then you missed step A, B, C, D, E, F, G before the mad, right?
Yeah.
When were you when did your heart start picking up a beat, giving you a little feather sense that something's not right here, my boundaries are being crossed? Like at the time of the explosion, you have missed 20, 25 signals from your body that you need to leave the situation.
Yeah.
You know, when there's a giant conflict, it doesn't just, people say, oh, it went from 0 to 100. And I'm like, it's really impossible. I mean, yes, if a snake comes to bite you, right, we want to explode out of the place with adrenaline. But if you're going 0 to 100 from a conflict with somebody, your nervous system is fucked. How present can you be with what you're feeling? Like you said, the sensations. And I think I have a list of like tingling and heart, like how do you...
Practical tools like that I think are really useful for people. There's the emotions wheel, which is like a super basic starting point for people. Point on the wheel, what you're feeling. Helping people develop emotional literacy.
But it's like, it really is the sensations in the body, you know? So for me, I always say to my clients, it's all about safety, like you said. So the amygdala's firing because you're not safe. Now, you're right. I loved your analogy. It was amazing about maybe the toaster oven's going off just because the piece of bread's in there, the house isn't going up in flames. Can you pause, take a breath, check in? Am I safe? Am I not? Is my nervous system frying over something that it shouldn't be?
Yeah.
You know, can I pause? Most people don't even have the consciousness to take that pause and check in. It just goes into full reaction, not response. And I guess I would love to know, like, how do you help your clients differentiate between when to react, when to respond?
The hard concept is easy in theory but difficult in reality is that anytime I'm triggered and there's no danger in my environment, it's my ego that's been threatened. I'm big on like written practice, and like sometimes people probably see my work as being a little bit heady, but I think there's value in that. So I think if you're in a grounded state and you feel safe and you feel comfortable, that's the time when you can start to explore some of this stuff. You're not going to be able to explore this when you're dysregulated. So I would sit and I would ask myself, like, what are my reactions to certain experiences? And I would just get clear on that. So the next time I see it, there's more potential. The analogy I use in one of my books is that if you stay in a hotel you've never been in before, and you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and the light's off, you don't really know where you're going, so you're going to bump into things. If you can turn on the light, you'll see the things and you can walk around them. And it's kind of similar that if you get more aware of your triggers, you're more likely to see what you're going to bump into. So I would explore things like, what's my reactions when people get too close? I withdraw. I get ratty. I get reactive. What's my reaction when people create distance? I reach for alcohol. So it's those kind of things I think can be useful. Yeah, the other thing I encourage people to do is map the nervous system. So if you think about your 3 states, you got your fight or flight on a very basic level. You got safe and social. Then I get activated, and then I shut down. Those are my 3, like traffic light system: green, orange, and red.
Polyvagal, really.
Yeah, super basic version of it. So there's a lady called Deb Dana. I love her work. She's brilliant. She took Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory and just makes it much more accessible. And what she has you do is like map your nervous system. So if you look at each of those states, green, orange, and red, in each state there's certain stories that live there. There's certain feelings, certain sensations, certain behaviors. Yeah, those things. So I might say when I'm in green, my story is I'm capable, the world is a safe place, and people are out to connect with me. When I'm in orange, the story shifts into I'm overwhelmed, people are unsafe, and the world is overwhelming. When I'm in red, I'm just using these as example stories, but everyone will have their own stories. So you map out, like, what are my stories when I feel shut down? What are my stories when I feel dysregulated? What are my stories when I feel safe? What are the emotions I experience in each? What are my behaviors? Okay, when I'm in orange, I drink a lot. Why is that? Because I don't feel safe. So this is the best strategy I've found up to this point. And so then you start to see your unhealthy behaviors as being warning signs. I did Gabor Mate's training years ago, and that's a lot of his work, is like recognizing that the reason you do the stupid thing is because you haven't found a healthier way. One story I sometimes share is I worked with a gambling addict years ago. I was kind of saying, what's it giving you? And he said, no, it's not giving me anything. And I said, you're not a stupid man. You're very switched on. there's a reason you're doing this on some level. Otherwise, everything makes sense on some level. Everything is serving you on some level. And when we peeled back the layers, what we realized was he had lost connection with his family, lost connection with his friends, and the only place in his life where he had human interaction was in the bookies when he was placing bets and gambling. So I said to him, you're a genius. It makes complete sense that you go into the bookies to meet your need for connection. Now that we know that, we can find a healthier way of you meeting connection. Same if I have to get out of my mind drunk to quieten my mind, makes complete sense. Until I find a better way of quietening my mind. So those would be some of my thoughts, yeah.
A lot of people will understand that it's, triggers aren't something to run from. And like triggers are treasures.
Yeah.
If you can start to look at your life, map your nervous system like that, I love that idea, and then start to say, oh, I'm conscious enough I'm in the orange zone.
Yeah.
What do I need right now in this moment to find safety? That's the first step, right? How can I find safety in a quicker way than numbing my feelings, running and sleeping with the guy, whatever it is that you do, right? What's a different healthy way to find safety? But then how do you process it, right? Like, so we got to get to the root cause. We got to figure out why we're creating this trigger, because it's, like you said, it's the ego coming up. It's an old pattern coming up, and you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to rewire whatever that is, if you're willing to turn around and look in the mirror and do the shadow work. So how do you do yours?
I guess it comes, in simple language, it comes down to connection or disconnection. So do I choose to connect or disconnect in that moment? Connection is leaning toward that part of myself. Disconnection is leaning away from that part of myself. So I'm a nice guy. I'm a people pleaser. I don't want to feel my anger. And so in the moments where I'm triggered and the anger comes up, do I honor that and turn toward it and be curious about it and express the energy at some point and like take the wisdom from it and track the roots of it and then step into a new story? I suppose that's the other bit. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm a little bit like, my thoughts on this stuff is changing all the time. There's a part of me now that has done so many years of shadow work that I'm like, I'm kind of bored of this now. I'm kind of bored of looking at the stories. I'm ready to like embrace the light more. And I feel like I've done my time in the trenches. Not that it'll come back. There'll be layers and layers and layers. But I think it's important with this stuff to remember like why we're doing it. And for me, it's to have more connection, more authenticity, more fulfillment in my life. So I've got enough to be working on. From a somatic point, I suppose we move the energy. From a cognitive point, we create a new story and we live in the new story. So if I'm bullied as a kid and I'm surrounded by bullies, the somatic experience in that is that my body freezes, there's energy stuck that can't move, and so that stays in the system. I go back into the world and I'm in safe environments, but the fire alarm goes off because I don't feel safe. So 20 years later, I'm in a group of men, there's a part of me that feels insecure. Okay, biologically I've grown up, but psychologically I'm stuck as a 6-year-old boy.
Exactly.
So that's your somatic experience, and then your psychological experience is look at it through different lenses. Shamanic work, they'll talk about soul retrieval, but for me, that's a part of myself gets cut off at that point. It gets exiled. A protector comes online, and so in that moment, I decide my vulnerability is not welcome. I can't share my tears, or I'll be rejected. And so my tough guy comes online, and then I spend the next 20 years of my life being a tough guy. Then I come into a relationship with a woman who tells me I can't be vulnerable, and I'm not showing up for her. And then there's like a choice point, like, am I going to fucking deal with this and go back and let the little boy cry? And let the teenager that stood in the way get angry. That's how I see it. Younger part of you got really terrified. Teenage part of you stepped in and said, I got you. And then as an adult, you're walking around playing out the teenage part. And growing up psychologically as the older version comes online and says, I got you and I got you.
It's so fascinating. So many amazing points in that. I'm so sick of shadow work too. I'm so fucking
I shouldn't be saying that because I brought out my shadow work book 2 months ago.
It's amazing, and it's a part of the journey. But I think there's a part of the journey where I've done probably 450 soul retrievals, and I'm fucking tired, right? And it is time to just embrace the light and look at life as a beautiful blessing and a gift, and not being a spiritual archaeologist like I was doing same thing as you, plant medicine, all that stuff, trying to and it's like perpetuating the I am broken story.
Sure.
And I'm tired. I'm not broken. I'm good. Everything's great, and I'll look at my triggers when they come up. It's just learning how to enjoy the ride a little bit more and find more authenticity and find more pleasure in it, because healing doesn't have to be so freaking painful. It doesn't. We make it so painful, and I think I don't know why we do that, but the inner child thing is interesting, because when I'm in conflict now, a new thing that I've been doing is, how old am I? Which version of me is here? Because I know them so well now, because I've done so much shadow work. I've got the 8-year-old that moved, that was bullied. I've got the 4-year-old, this is ugly to talk about, but that was sexually molested, that has no power. And then I've got the people pleaser. And then I've got the 14-year-old that became rebellious. And it's like, which one? And then I have the 2-year-old that's dad left. So those are the consistent 4 that show up for me.
Yeah.
So when things come up and I'm triggered, I'm like, who am I right now? And I'm like, oh, what does she need? And then I'm able to quickly be like, oh, okay. And then I think about, how old do I think this person's being right now? And who's older? Because one of us is going to need to put the stuff down here, right? And find a solution and be the parent because it is like every conflict is 2 inner children or 2 teenagers battling it out. It's not conscious, or you'd have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that's a big part of my shadow work now, is just looking at how my relationships are in my life. How conscious are they across all levels? And where is my ego still a little proving itself, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
The best thing I heard, most succinct thing I've heard on relationship is like, in the moment where I'm triggered, so me and you get into an argument or a conflict or something else, we're both go to our heads. We feel out the anger in our bodies. We're in our heads. She's doing this and he's doing this, and there's all this stuff going on. The only thing that I can know in that moment is what I'm feeling. That's pretty much all I can know. I can assume your experience. I can assume your feelings. I can assume your judgments. It's all projection. Like the only thing I can know is what I'm feeling, and that's the very thing that we're terrified to share. And so I think being the healthy adult is about saying, I'm noticing in this moment I'm feeling super sad. If I can reveal the part of myself that's scariest to reveal, that's where the repair, I think, can happen. But it's the one thing we want to protect. It's the only thing we know, and it's the one thing we want to protect. It's like, can I have the courage to share the part of me that I can be sure of?
And do you think this is harder for men?
I mean, conditionally, I guess, like my way of seeing our conditioning is that the first layer of conditioning is your family. You learn who you need to be in your family. And then you step into school and you've got a wider level of conditioning as to who you need to be within your peer group. And then the bigger picture is the culture. So that's your religion, your media. There's a huge amount of conditioning that happens by the time we're 7. And the reason I kind of bring that in is obviously a pretty common one is that women should be ladylike and shouldn't be angry, and boys shouldn't cry. That's like kind of universal messages. So I think the idea of a man showing his tears in a vulnerable way, that's probably scary. I think the idea for a woman to show her anger is probably scary. So I think it's different depending on what you've put in the basement.
I love that you said in the basement, because that's exactly what it is. I shouldn't feel that way, so I'm not going to.
Yeah. And the irony of the thing you're unwilling to feel, you will unconsciously create. So if I don't want to feel my anger, I won't speak up for myself. When I don't speak up for myself, I end up resenting myself, and the anger gets projected toward myself. So I'm creating the very thing I'm afraid to feel. If I don't want to feel my loneliness, I'll protect myself in case I get hurt. And in that, I'm not letting anyone in. So it's like we create the very thing we don't want through the shadow.
It's so fascinating. What emotion do you dislike feeling the most?
All of them.
Really? Yeah. Like, I like feeling anger sometimes. Like, I think that's where boxing came in for me. It was like from being, again, that program of I'm powerless, and then coming in and feeling like that connection and being like, wait a minute, I'm not powerless. But it was my physical, like you said, the fit mind, right? Like my physical body started to feel powerful. Even if I didn't think I was, I felt it. And that was like where my shift was. Nice. So now when I feel anger, I like to go and punch bags. Nice. So that my body can move through it in that way. A little, like that's my healthy way. I used to get in fights with everybody and be really dramatic. And I was very, very dramatic. But I enjoy that. I hate shame. I freaking hate sitting in that. Ugh.
That's the big one.
Oh, and I think that's the one that it feels, it's like pukey, you know? And you just, that purge, like doing ayahuasca will help you through that. But the purge of the shame that sits in between the fear and anger all the time, it's like, that's the one I hate.
I was reflecting actually this morning on what are the conversations I'm not willing to have that I need to have. And the reason I'm not having them is because I don't want to feel the feeling that comes with it. So what's the feeling below? And the two feelings were anger and shame. And I was interested in how they kind of correlate. Like sometimes there's anger, like fuck you. And below that there's sadness, or there's like I'm not enough. So there's the shame below the anger. And then other times it's the opposite. There's shame about feeling angry. So it's like I want to say fuck you, but I shouldn't. So
right?
Like weird,
and then you feel guilty, and then that gets wrapped up in a fear, and then you don't speak, and then it's just like becomes like a big trauma onion. It's
probably a weird thing about joy is one of my hard ones to feel in connection with others. I can in groups. That I was on I was on a retreat last year, and like we did all this grief work, we did anger work, and then there was one day which was like all about joy and stuff. I wanted the ground to swallow me up.
No way.
Super confronting.
So you were uncomfortable in the pleasure.
Yeah.
In the receiving.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I think a lot of women as well. I don't work with men in pleasure. I think that's fucking weird, by the way. Any tantric coaches that are listening to this, that men doing yoni work, you're fucking gross. But so with the pleasure stuff with women, a lot of women that have been through sexual trauma, because most of my clients do, they have issues receiving. They can't orgasm. They have like a lot of struggle with feeling any sort of pleasure because of the shame associated with the pleasure with the program. And receiving, it's like they've shut that completely off. They can't feel that at all. And that means that if they can't feel pleasure, they're creating their whole life from shame. And that's an ugly, no offense, a pretty brutal looking life with no pleasure.
Yeah.
So for you, did you have a lot of, is that masked with shame, with the joy? Or do you think joy is more on the other side of grief for you? I guess, is joy pleasure to you, or do you find them different?
This was around being seen, actually, in this specific...
Okay.
Yeah. It was like an ecstatic dance that we did, but it was each person goes out into the middle for a long time in a group of like 60 people.
Too.
Yeah. So like afterward, I went to my therapist, and he's just like, "Do you think it's just like a weird thing to have to do?"
It's very strange.
Like, yeah. He's like, "Do you think you just didn't enjoy it?" And that's like, there doesn't need to be anything more to it. I was like, "Okay, fair enough."
No, I mean, ecstatic dance to me, I've tried it so many times because I should like it. I'm spiritual, and it's a great way of connecting with people, but to me, it just feels weird too. So I agree with you.
I can do ecstatic dance, but just this thing of like being in the middle and, okay, you got to get the crowd going for the next half an hour. It's like, oh, fuck, 60 people. You're just like...
Half an hour by yourself in the middle.
In groups of 5.
Huh.
Yeah.
That would make me uncomfortable too.
Okay, good to know. So outside of that, I would say, what's hard? I guess it depends on context. Yeah, definitely shame is hard to feel. Anger is hard to express. I can feel everything in the privacy of my own heart and the privacy of my own. It's in connection to others. Can I show those parts? So I think I think I'm okay with feeling everything. Maybe it's like sharing.
Sharing. So when in group healing, which you're doing, with the breath work and stuff, do you find that to be a place where you feel safe to feel in a breath work scenario?
Yeah.
What makes it different?
I think intimate relationship is probably the one that's difficult because, as you say, that's the real shadow work. Because breath work, I can close the doors and go home to my life afterwards. It's kind of like there's a start and an end time to some degree. So people get close, and I can show that part of myself. But then I can retreat to safety when I feel ready. I think it's that.
Are you in a relationship now?
No.
And do you feel that a lot of the shadow work makes it hard to be in relationship? Or the spiritual path, I should say, right?
Yeah, there
it's like a massive contract that we're getting into, right? At this stage of where you're at.
I think the dating pool gets smaller as you do more of this stuff, for sure.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Yeah. I did the feminine cleanse last year, which was like 7 months of celibacy, and like
amazing.
That was the hardest addiction ever. Just in terms of like recognizing how many. One of my teachers is John Wineland, who's based in the States, and he talked about this thing for years, and I knew I had to do it, but it was scary. And his thing was, which makes a lot of sense, was men learn pretty early on to get soothed by women. So it's like men use women to regulate their emotions. So I feel sad, and I go to the coffee shop, and the barista smiles at me, and temporarily I feel better about myself. And so unconsciously then I walk through life trying to get hits from the feminine because I don't nurture my own inner feminine. So the practice was 7 months of like no flirting, shut down any conversations that are happening. Like if the barista girl smiles, get the fuck out of there pretty quick, and feel everything that's behind that. Like feel your grief, feel your sadness. Get comfortable with the idea that you're never going to meet anyone. He says death-facing practice. Get to the point where you know you're never going to meet anyone, and you're okay with yourself, and then you're ready for a relationship. So it was pretty confronting. Yeah,
I can imagine that being very confronting. Conscious relationships are definitely giant mirrors too, and I think a lot of people think, again, it's an imbalanced perception that you think that by having this person, like you said, they're going to fill the void, right, of your attachment style issues, whether you're avoidant or anxious. And again, that's the mind stuff. So until you get that stuff at peace. And I love how you called it a death, because it's a death of a giant attachment and program.
Yeah.
and that someone else is going to save
Probably
you.
the deepest one, because it's, for me, I should say, because it's normal. Like, if you drink too much, people can see you drink too much. If you eat too much, people can see you eat too much. So you can't really hide your other addictions. Well, you can hide them, I guess, but they're more stigmatized. But when I told people I'm going to not talk to women for 6 months in that way, it's like, are you okay? It's like a completely different thing. And same for women. Like, I mean, I remember actually the first time doing ecstatic dance years ago, and everyone was kind of sharing afterward like how their experience was. And I remember a girl saying to me, it was weird to dance and not be doing it for getting male attention. So that was like her thing. So I think we all look for attention unconsciously.
It's almost as if any of the attachments that we think we need are an addiction. Like, we only look at addiction from the realm of alcohol, coffee.
Yeah.
But addiction can be...
For me, addiction is this intensity in my body that I don't want to feel, so I need to soothe it. Like, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I could kind of track what was happening for him. He was worried about drinking too much. And I asked him, what's the conversation you're not having that you need to have? He said, oh, such and such. I said, what's the feeling behind the conversation? Anger. I said, okay, so there's anger in your system that's not being felt, which is a lot of intensity, and the alcohol helps create some space from that intensity in your body. It makes sense that you're drinking. So
once you validate that, does that help them a little bit?
I think so, because like you're not a bad guy. You're not like it's like you're not stupid.
Don't you think the I am bad is such a big root thing that people have? And I think that goes back almost to the religious programming that a lot of us have. That's generational.
Be a good boy. Be a good girl.
Be a good girl. But what does that even mean? Be good to who? And what standards, right? Like every place that you go, like you said, what does good mean to my mom and dad? That's going to be different to what's good to my teacher, what's good to my peers, and and I think that we don't really learn what's good for me. And it takes a long time to figure that out. And I remember when I started doing this work and I started to see that most of the things I was doing in my life were for connection. It wasn't about me wanting to do any of the things. I wanted connection so bad that I would do things that made me feel bad to be good for them. Sure. And then I'd resent myself. Yeah. Self-hate spiral, and then I'd ate myself to death, and I just became this mess because in reality I was so afraid of not being liked, of being bad, and then I'd be punished and whatever the hell that means, And
that's another catch-22. We don't present ourselves as our authentic selves because we're afraid we'll be rejected. And we long for connection, but the connection never happens because we never present our true self. So it's like we're just creating the condition we don't want. Like I'll show the version of you that I think you'll like because I want to connect, but I don't feel the connection because I'm not presenting my true self. So there's a surface level thing going on there. I'm terrified that if I present myself as I am, you'll reject me, but I'm already rejected because you don't see me.
Exactly, and that means you're not being authentic. And I actually think authenticity is the highest vibration. That's my new...
Okay, hot take.
I do, because I think we look for love, but what is love, right? The word love, it's like, unconditional love. But can we really love with uncondition in the human experience? Are we really at that stage, many of us? I don't think so. I'm definitely not there. There's a lot of times there's a lot of need, and it's like, again, I'm always trying to do my work to be less and less of that, but I think it's hard sometimes, to...
It's probably a tricky statement based on that, but I heard the other day, if I need something from you, I can't be authentic.
Right. So again, and how many things in life do you need? And that's all about, like, separation, right? Like, I need this because I don't believe I have this. Therefore, I'm in separation from the truth that I am everything. So it's like, how do we continue to pull those? And this is, I think, my new shadow work. Is where am I in separation with the one? Where am I believing there's something outside of me that I need, and how can I pull that back? And that's my new shadow work. I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe call it light work, trying to return the pillar back.
You got time.
Yeah, I know, right? And then it's like, why am I in a rush with this damn healing thing, right? We're eternal beings. This isn't ever going to end. So what's the freaking rush? Maybe we could have some more joy and some more pleasure.
Yeah.
Is dating for you challenging because women see you as the pedestal, right? We can talk about the pedestal with shadow work as well. Like you said, who was your biggest mentor? That's the story that you're kind of looking to live, becoming the hero of your own movie. So is dating hard with being where you're at, with women pedestaling you?
A pattern I saw only recently that I didn't realize was happening was I had like we do it to ourselves. So I in my work I feel quite clear and confident and grounded, and I think I'm a pretty clear communicator and stuff like that, and I feel solid in myself. It's like what I'm born to do, so I'm super comfortable with this. I can hold anything in session. And so that's a standard that I would love to bring into my whole life and stuff like that. So the story that would happen would be I'd get into the early stages of dating, and then my belief system was as soon as I get messy or I show my anxiety or I show any of the chinks in the armor, they leave. The reality of that story was I was rejecting those parts of myself, and then I was pushing them away. So they weren't necessarily rejecting it, but I was perpetuating the story. They leave when I get messy. Reality was I was leaving when I got messy.
And who did you believe when you were a little boy left when you got messy? Like, where did that story program from?
Good question.
It feels deeper than just it feels like it's like you said, it's like, again, this is shadow work, right? So you've consciously figured out, okay, cool, I'm pushing people away because I'm running away from my own emotions. But when did you start running from your emotions? Whose love confused you that made you run from your emotions as a kid?
I think I reflect sometimes on the pressure my parents probably put on themselves to get it right. And if a parent needs to get it right, then the child somewhat needs to be performative in order to keep the parents comfortable.
Yeah.
I think there might be some of that it went on, which is like, and then perpetuates the cycle, because I recognize that in myself, that like, I got to be messy and vulnerable in order to have true connection. You can't get it right and have connection all the time. You know, that's not very attractive to someone if someone's always getting it right.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
like,
an annoying.
the
Nobody
pattern
wants
is
to be
that.
with a know-it-all.
Yeah. So this is the year of the relationship, I reckon. This will be the shadow work.
Yeah, I feel like it's coming.
Yeah, I had a big shift actually recently. I started this 3-year psychotherapy training. And like the first day, the guy leading the training is like, Pat, you're ready for wife and kids, you need to sort this shit out. And I was like, fuck, I never told you that. I never told myself that, but I was like, I feel that now, yeah.
So the Breathwork Facilitator training that you do now, what does that entail?
We'll do 6 months online first, and then we do a 5-day retreat, and then we do another 6 months online. The first third is very much personal process. The second third is facilitating one-to-ones, and then the third is groups. And it's pretty intensive. It's like 300 hours in the first 6 months, which is a little bit too much. I'm trying to like ease it off a little bit. But the core pieces are daily practice. So we go through 12 daily practices. So the idea of starting with self. Then we've got 12 modules, which is ranging from the science to the business of breathwork, to the nervous system work, to the facilitation skills, to, you know, the whole spectrum. Obviously, a lot of breathwork journeys the students do themselves. They'll facilitate 24 case studies. We do a lot of conscious communication work. We do some coaching stuff. We do a lot of shadow work. It's a journey.
It's intense.
Yeah, and you know, like the first group, I only started this last year, like close to 100 students now, which has been amazing. And, you know, I'd love to sign people up for 3 years, but people won't sign up for 3 years. But I can imagine 3 years from now, I'll have students that have trained with me for the past 3 years, because the people that went through the first year are like, I want more. So there's a level 2 that's in the works probably. Again, I think in the world we live, there's not too many people that are going to commit to a container longer than 12, even 12 months is a pretty big commitment from people when you can certify in a couple of days or whatever. But
It's bullshit though.
But I love my people because I know they're all going to be good because they have a willingness to like, and a lot of them come in, they say, I just want to do this for personal. It was funny, I was doing so many different things. I was doing corporate workshops, I was doing men's work, I was doing one-to-ones, I was doing trauma release work, I was doing way too much. And I had a bit of a like not crisis last year, but I was a bit like, oh, I'm not known for anything anymore. I do like 20 different things. So if you want a trauma release person, you can go to me, who's just like a mongrel that does all sorts of things, or you can go to like. So I said I need to pick one thing and go all in. So I went to all in on breathwork. I got rid of everything I was doing except for breathwork and like took a gamble on it. I've been leading breathwork for 8 years, but it was the facilitator training. Because it's my only offer now, I have a range of people, ranging from people that have never done a breathwork session in their life that just want to be in a container for 12 months with this work, to people that are like highly experienced. So that's an interesting one. It works, but it's interesting. Like
Why did you choose breathwork of all the modalities and all the things?
For me, it's the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. It's shadow in action. I love the shadow work in the sense that, again, shadow can have these like connotations of being like really heavy and stuff, but there's also golden shadow, which is like the hidden potential. So I was told, don't be too much, so you hide your too muchness, or you hide your creativity, or you're told to grow up and you hide your childlike nature. So there's all that to be uncovered too in the shadow. I'm big on bioenergetics as well, like the idea of holding patterns in the body. So I brace so I don't feel the emotion, and then that tension stays in the body. So the breath work for me can help release the bracing also. So there's just so many layers to it.
Do you do body work and myofascial release and stuff while you're facilitating, or are you really just allowing them to just have a full breath journey and letting the body unwind on its own?
I let the body unwind, yeah. I'm trained in myofascial body work with one of Osho's guys. I did like 6 weeks of training with him last year, which was epic.
It's amazing, but I love what you said. It's like, be niche. Like, you can't do all the things. It's for my own practice I can, but to be a master in teaching, it's probably challenging. Like right now, I think that's what we're making the mistake about, is like teaching every single thing I've ever learned and trying to do it in 1 year. And it's like, this is 15 years of work. Like, can't do it in 1 year.
Me too.
So that's where your level 2 is probably coming in with the myofascial stuff and the body work. And because it's like layers and levels to this thing, you can't just do a 3. I really see these like, oh, come do a 3-day breath work, and I'm a breath work facilitator. It's like,
I also have to check in with myself in terms of like the part of me that wants to over deliver. It's like, what's the energy behind that? I've done so many courses over the years where I'm like, that wasn't worth my money or worth my time. So I think there's a fear of like letting people down in that regard. I just want to like almost give them a new picture of what it can be to be like held and supported.
My last question I want to ask, because most of my audience is very spiritual, woo-woo, I would say, more so. It seems as though we got a lot of mind and body work going on, but the spiritual aspect, I can tell that you're also very deeply spiritual. When did that all come online, and how do you incorporate that into the breath work?
Funny, I had this memory yesterday of, I guess I was 18, training to be a personal trainer. Me and my friend went to England and we were doing our course and stuff, and we're out drinking. This kind of woo-woo lady stopped us on the street. She's like, oh, you've just got this energy. And then she turned to my friend and she's like, you've got really dark energy. She was saying to me, get the fuck away from this guy. And she was probably right in retrospect. I just need to get out of the way. I think my head came online quite early, like my strategies and my way of like protecting myself. So I just need to, I don't even think about the spiritual part. It's just there, and I just need to quieten my mind, and it comes through. So I've put myself in so many situations throughout my life where I can't do it. Like the me can't do it. It's got to be something that comes true. So I'd like to be more consistent with maybe connecting to that part when I'm not channeling or whatever it is. But I've been on mountains for 28 days, and I've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So
If somebody was watching this podcast and just getting started on their journey of trying to have a fit mind, what would you tell them to do? Besides read your book.
Rather than like look back on your past, like don't feel the need to go back in your past. Get curious about what life is giving you right now. So life is giving you messages in the form of challenges or problems. So like there's a couple of things that are challenging in your life right now, and there's patterns in those challenges, and if you just work with those patterns. So work with what life is giving you rather than always having to excavate for more, because that will inform you of what's happened in your past. So rather than trying to get it all or fix it all, like trust that life is going to keep pissing you off for the rest of your life to bring you back to yourself. So explore your current challenges, make an earnest commitment to like tackling it. One of the exercises I give my students or clients is I call it the change that changes everything. So like pick one thing that if it changed in your life, everything in your life would improve, and then figure out what's in the way. Get clear about where you'll be in a year if you make the change, but also get clear on where you'll be in 10 years if you don't make the change, because the pain of that can be painful, and we can be driven more from pain. So what's going to happen if you don't commit to this thing? So you're drinking too much. Okay, 10 years from now, if you keep drinking too much, what's going to happen? You're being too much of a perfectionist. Okay, 10 years from now, how's your life going to look like if that keeps coming online? You're pushing love away. What's your life going to look like? So pick the one change that would change everything. Explore what life is looking at, what life is presenting you with. And find a community of people that allow you to express the parts of yourself that you haven't felt safe to express. That can be the most tricky part to find, but you won't find them by staying in your house. Last one actually I'll say is, I heard this last year and I thought it was nice. If you want to change your life, get out of your house and get out of your head. In other words, get out of the old belief systems and try something different, and get out of your physical environment that you occupy all the time.
Amazing. And just because you're a shadow work guy, we talked about the mirror. I'm going to hold the mirror up for you right now. What's the change that would change everything for you?
It's probably a little bit broad, but more being and less doing, like more trusting and less trying to make things happen. That's the one. In everything, in relationship, in holding space, in facilitating, in marketing, in just like trusting life, because life has never let me down.
When you figure out how to be, tell me what to do.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Yeah.
Amazing. How can people get in touch with you, work with you, find you? What's the best ways?
I'm usually in the coffee shops around Pereira here in Bali. Instagram, Pat Divilly is my handle. I don't really, Instagram probably, or patdivilly.com. My books are Fit Mind and Shadow Work. Those are the two most recent books. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on today.
Are you writing anything else?
No.
No.
I need a break.
We're done with that.
Yeah.
And are you going to do any group facilitation, breathwork stuff while you're in Bali?
It's probably a different thread, but there's definitely like something in me that recognizes how much Bali's given me, and I do want to find a way of giving back. So there's I've been doing a bit with some charities here, so I would like to like find some kind of link there that anything I do here, but I don't have my visa to work here yet, but next year I guess I'll get a visa and I will do stuff on the ground and find a way of kind of giving back for everything I'm getting from being here.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time. I absolutely loved this journey today with Pat. I'm really in awe of the depth of knowledge and his insights that he's taken us through. He's truly a man that's embodied in his work. And let's take a moment to just breathe that in and reflect on the gifts that this conversation offered today. He truly helped explain and give a deeper understanding of how shadow work can connect us to our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. He explained breath work and how you can really use that today to start shifting your energy and your state of mind. He gave us insights into how breathwork can be a powerful tool for releasing trauma and limiting beliefs. And he truly is an inspiration for how his own self-discovery and personal transformation has become his purpose and how he's leading others. Whether you're just starting your spiritual journey, your breathwork journey, or your shadow work journey, or looking to deepen your practice, remember that your breath is always with you. A powerful tool for transformation that you can access at any moment. And if this conversation has sparked something within you, if you're feeling that pull to dive deeper into breathwork in your own healing journey, definitely come join me on my Embodied Healer program. This program beautifully complements the breathwork practices that Pat talks about. We dive deep into energy work, trauma release through breath and other holistic healing modalities. And you'll learn how to tap into your innate healing ability yourself to develop the skills to guide others on their healing journeys, which is exactly what Pat did. He used his own journey to help others heal. It's about breaking free from limitations, healing deep-seated traumas, and stepping into a life of purpose and deep fulfillment. So if you're ready to liberate your bliss, harness the power of your breath, and break free from old patterns, take the next step. Head over to my website or reach out directly. Let's continue this journey of healing and self-discovery together. Thank you for tuning in. If you found value in this episode, follow, rate, review. It helps us reach way more people. And for those watching on YouTube, give me a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to hear in a future episode. May you breathe in beauty, may you exhale your truth, and may you always, always liberate your bliss.